Welcome to Real Money, Real Life, the podcast where we get real about money and the messy human stuff that comes with it. I'm Linda Grizely, financial educator and your Me Money guide to financial clarity. Each week, we dive into financial concepts and money strategies, but we always tie it back to real life, emotions, mindset, and how money actually shows up day to day. If you're ready for practical tools, mindset shifts, and honest conversations that meet you where you are, not where the world thinks you should be, you're in the right place. Because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you use it. No judgment, no lectures, and definitely no putting yourself last.
Hello, everyone. If you're listening, you're one of the real ones, the ones who know money only matters when it's connected to your real life. Today's conversation is about the space where money and life meet. When I first saw my guest today, Carl's sketch, a Venn diagram with money on one side, life on the other, and real financial advice in the middle, I knew he had to be on this show. That intersection is the entire foundation of Real Money, Real Life. And in this episode, we're going to explore why money is never just math, why behavior matters more than optimization, and how clarity, not complexity, helps us align our financial decisions with what truly matters. Carl's new book, Your Money, Imagining Wealth in Simple Sketches, lives in this exact space. So if you think about that Venn diagram with the circle of money and the circle of life, and then this little arrow pointing to real financial advice right in the middle where they meet, that is why Carl is here. So a little bit about Carl. He's a certified financial planner, author, speaker, and the creator of the Sketch Guy column, which ran weekly in the New York Times for over a decade. He's known globally for using simple sketches to explain many complex money ideas. And he's the author of The Behavior Gap, the one-page financial plan, and Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches. Through his work, Carl helps people align their financial decisions with what matters in their lives without shame, fear, or complexity. Hello, Carl. Welcome to the show.
Linda, thanks so much for having me. Really, really excited about this conversation.
Great. So let's just start off with that Venn diagram that I'm talking about, the money in life and the real financial advice, because I think that captures so much of everything, which is why I have this podcast. So tell us more about that. Maybe what came to mind when you drew it out?
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar, and maybe your listeners are too, there was this great book that I think is maybe one of the best personal finance books ever written, Your Money or Your Life. And I loved everything about that book. And I remember reading it early on in my career. But there was always something that and again, I want to be really clear, like I love everything about that book. But there was always just something about the title. With the word "or," your money or your life, and there was this sense of that it was a choice, that they were in conflict, that they and again, the book makes it really clear why that's a useful paradigm, and I wouldn't change a thing about it. But I always loved the idea of like, well, what does it look like if it was your money and your life? What would it look like if those two were aligned? And I started to kind of believe that real financial advice is the alignment of your use of capital with what's really important to you. And if that was, that Venn diagram you pointed to is the simplified version of that, your money, your life. It could be your use of capital and what's important to you. Both sides of that give us things to work on. Like, how do we really know what we want in our lives? How do we really know what our goals should be? Like versus Instagram goals, right? Like $5 billion in a sailboat. Like I saw how do we really, what's really important to us versus maybe what our mom or our dad would always say, or what society says. And then the other side, your money, or your use of capital, like, geez, there's a lot to talk about there too. Like, how do I invest it? What budgeting app do I use, et cetera? So I just think it's a never ending process of trying to align both of those that results in, and again, it's never ending. So it's not like it you finally get someplace, but it results in a life of sort of using our money to make meaning for ourselves and make a difference. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, I love it. And I haven't heard of this book, Your Money or Your Life, but you're right.
Mm,
Like when I hear that, I think, no, it's not one or the other.
yeah.
It's both. How do you make them work in harmony together, right? How do you make that work? So it's interesting, but I'm gonna have to go find the book and read it now.
Yeah,
All
it's
right. So
really, really good. Cole, like one of the most, and I think one of the most influential personal finance books ever written. So I am in no way saying anything negative about the book. It was just the title always sort of like I
yeah.
was just, I wrestled with it. That's probably the best way to put it.
Right, right. Makes sense. I'm definitely gonna have to read that one. Okay, so tell us more about you. What's your story? Where did you come from? How did you get where you
Mm.
are now? What made you start making these doodles?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's such a nice question. And please know that there's always a tendency, and for your audience, I'm going to try really hard not to do this when we're asked about our careers to look backwards and make up really cute stories as if it all made sense. And I want to really emphasize that like none of this made sense. I literally in college was working in a landscape company. I was like digging ditches for a living. I came home one day, my wife, who'd graduated with a finance degree, and she had a great job, had out the help wanted ads. And we both thought what she found was a security guard job. And I thought this would be great because I could work at night and still go to school full time. And it turns out the ad didn't say security, it said securities. But I didn't know the difference. So I went and applied to be a security guard and I ended up at Fidelity Investments. So it was like completely by accident. And so that, but then I discovered real quickly, I got into the financial advice kind of industry by accident, but I discovered real quickly it wasn't about money, right? It was about fear and greed, worries and concerns, dreams and goals. Like it was about humans. In fact, I mean, Linda, don't tell anybody, but I really don't care about money. I just see it as a portal into our most important decisions. Unfortunately, like I think that's unfortunate, but it's the reality. Like our dreams, our fears, our worries. So I stayed, and then if you fast forward a couple years, I 5 or 6 years, I had clients, and one day I was sitting across the table from some clients who were really, really smart and successful, and I was trying to explain a concept that I thought was really important for them to understand in order to make this decision. And again, they were really smart and successful. And I was just getting blank stares. And I remember for the first time, I mean, that had happened, the blank stares had happened before, but it was the first time it dawned on me that I was like, oh no, these are smart. It's my problem. Like I must not be explaining this right. And so out of an act of desperation, because I have no art background, I wasn't a doodler in high school, like there was a whiteboard in this office that used, and I'd never used it before. And out of an act of desperation, I was like, no, like this. And it's like a square and a circle and an arrow. And they were like, oh, I get it now. And I remember that feeling of like, what? Really? Like that? That. And so I did it again. And again, like I just did it again and I did it again. And you fast forward a couple years and the editor at the New York Times asked if I'd do them for them. And I knew, right? I knew enough to say yes to that. And that's how it happened.
Do you remember what that first doodle was? You said it was a square and an arrow, but do you remember what it was
Yeah, it
about?
was as I recall, and I try to be careful because I don't know for sure, but I know who it was. A clients named Dave and Diane. And as I recall, it was purely like we're going to save money. It's going to go from your bank account to your investment account. And then at a certain point, I remember erasing the arrow and saying, and then at a certain point, we're going to take money from your investment account back to your checking account, like accumulation, decumulation. So
Ah, okay. Yeah.
saving for retirement and then using the money when you're in retirement. It was something like that. Pretty simple.
Yeah, and that's a great example. I always use the mountain example. Like you're building up your money and you're building this mountain of money, and then all of a sudden you're at the top, and now you got to figure out how to get down safely, right? So
Oh,
you
smart,
start spending
smart.
the money down and you're rappelling down this mountain. The last thing
Yeah, I
you
like
want
that.
is to hit a cliff and fall off. But I
Right,
like
right.
that the boxes make sense too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I like that. It's good.
Yeah, I think the boxes might be easier for people to understand
Yeah,
than my mountain. So maybe I'll have to change that. But
yeah.
yeah, I love that. And I think uh, what do you think is your most like What is your favorite doodle or your most famous doodle? Either one. They could be two separate things.
Yeah, that's it. So the one that people have, like, the only one that's made it in the house, the only one that my wife is allowed in the house is, it's another Venn diagram. I'm always careful about that because I don't know if you know this, but there are Venn diagram police that send long emails about why things aren't Venn diagrams. And I've gotten those. It's fine. Like, now I just reply and say, "You're right. I just call this a circle sketch." So in one circle, it says, things you can control. And the other circle says, um, things that matter. So things you can control, things that matter. And the overlap is labeled like what we should try to focus on. That's been really useful for a lot of people in a lot of ways. That's the one that probably more people have purchased and like hung on their walls. And when it comes to like super appropriate right now, right? Like when it comes to the news, we're just not wired. We're not wired to hear news at the volume we're hearing it, especially about stuff that we can't do anything about. And that when your circle of focus is so much bigger than your circle of control. Sorry, when your circle of concern is so much bigger than your circle of control, you get overwhelmed and depressed and sad and anxious. And so I like to use that sketch as like, okay, does it matter? Yeah, I mean, I could argue all the things in the news, especially human suffering and environmental stuff. Like, does it matter? Yeah. And then I have to go to the other side. Like, do I have any control over it? And, I want to push the edges of that. Like, I don't want to let myself off the hook and just say, I can't do anything about it. But after I push the edges, I'm probably like, yeah, maybe I should just, go to the local homeless shelter. Or like, is there something I can go do? Or maybe I should just go garden for the day. Like, and so that one's been really, really useful for people, and useful for me over the years.
Wow, so it's the public favorite and it's your favorite? It's both?
Well, I have lots of favorites. I like, one of the ones that I like because it has a lot to do with, I'm really kind of proud of it. Um, and it has a lot to do with my own process is this. You can imagine, and we used to do this all the time with NPR, like, art on the radio. So for all the listeners, you can just imagine, a line coming from the left-hand side of the piece of paper, right horizontally, right in the middle of the paper. It's coming across. And it's just a simple line. And it gets about to the middle of the paper and it starts to do squiggles. So, and it just keeps going around and around and around and around. And so it looks like a giant ball of yarn by the time you're done. And then it comes out the other side. And this, to me, like, making a financial decision often feels this way. Like, I just want to open a bank account. Or I need a new credit card. Oh, that seems easy, like simple line. And then you're like, oh, which one? And how about the rewards? Have you looked at, oh my gosh, I better research all the rewards. And I'm going to go into Reddit and I'm going to find a thread on rewards. And every time I read something, I feel more confused. And I even built a spreadsheet. And like, you're in the middle of that giant ball of yarn. And that's kind of an important place to be occasionally. Like, you're considering everything. Like, if you're going to go buy a new pair of shoes and you read the reviews on Amazon, you don't feel more clarity. You feel a little bit more confused. And then there gets to be a certain moment where you're like, oh, you know what? I think this is what matters. We're just going to get a 2% cash back because I don't want to have to deal with rewards. Seems simple. Or, we travel a lot and we love Marriott, so we're going to get a Marriott card. Or Delta's a major hub. This is in my example, like, Delta's a major hub in Utah. The Delta Amex, because I use Delta so much, actually pays for itself. Even though it costs $500, I get that money back by February. Okay, simple, right? Come out the other side. So I love that because and the simple line at the beginning on the left side is labeled simplistic. A big ball of yarn is labeled complexity. And that spot you get to on the other side is labeled elegant simplicity. And it started really from an Oliver Wendell Holmes quote. He said, I wouldn't give a fig, which is such a great quote. I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on this side of complexity, but I'd give my right arm for the simplicity on the other side. And I think that to me applies to finance, but it also applies to a new pair of running shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a great example because almost anything you can think about in finance. Like you think, okay, I need, like, just for instance, even like, okay, I need to get a financial advisor. Well, then
Yeah.
when you realize that there's a million different kinds and everybody calls themselves one, but they all do different things, it's not as easy as you thought it was. And it seems super simple.
Yeah.
And a lot of times you don't even know that till you're already in it. But anyway, almost everything you can think about in personal finance is like that.
I'm actually sometimes find myself saying, like even out loud, I'll say like, I can't believe anybody gets anything done these days because I'm just trying to do my taxes, and there's like, I didn't realize I need to set aside 7 days to collect things. Where's the password? And hey, do you have your passport? Like you're suddenly just like, where's oh, the passports are in the safe. Does anybody remember this, the combo? Like it just, we need a simple estate plan. Life insurance. Oh my gosh. Right. Like, yeah. So it's everything.
Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
reason, like, if you I just mentioned to your listeners, like, if you feel that way, man, it seems so complex. Just know that you're not alone, and there are certainly things like listening to this podcast, like, that'll help you get through that complexity and get to the other side and go, "Oh, you know what? The thing that actually matters is, I just need this," right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the sketches we're talking about are in your book, Your Money:
Yeah,
Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches.
correct. There's
Okay,
101 in there.
tell us more about the book. How many? 101?
Yeah, so it's been 11 years since my last book, The One-Page Financial Plan, and I kind of swore off writing books because I really like, well, first of all, the way I think, um, is leads to these like short. So some of these, there's 101 sketches. Some of the essays are 2 lines, and for a very long time, the publishing industry didn't like those kind of books. They like that like. I remember I wrote my first book. I thought it should be 100 pages, and they're like, "No, books are 225 pages." I'm like, well, but it should only be 100. No, they're 220. It's like, so I was like, I don't know that I need to write another book. And then along came podcasting, and I like talking better than like writing anyway. I process audibly, and I love conversations. So I was like, I'm never going to write another book. But what happened was, after getting asked almost every month, like, what happened was I kept getting people who would say, "Hey, I saw that sketch you did. I printed it out and put it on the bulletin board at work." And then they would never say, to my great disappointment, they would never say like, "Oh, we can't believe how artistic it is or how beautiful it is," or but what they would say was, "You can't imagine the conversations it sparked." And I got that. I mean, at this point, thousands and thousands of emails like that. And so I finally realized, like, well, what if I put together a book that the entire goal of the book is to spark conversation? So I actually think of it as I don't think of it as a book. I think of it as a conversation grenade. Like you throw it in a room and conversations break out. So that's why I wrote it. So it's 101 sketches with 101 essays. Some of them are 2 lines, some of them are a page, but none of them take more than 3 minutes to read. And so that's the book.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you're right. There's so many conversations that could be had around that. Bathroom reading maybe, I don't know, coffee table.
I called it that.
Sorry.
My agent was like, "No, don't call it a bathroom book. It's called an airplane book." Okay,
An
that's fine.
airplane book.
That's
There you
fine.
go.
That's fine. But I love
All right.
it. Really was meant to be like an unpretentious coffee table book. Like every single thing about this, the cover, the amount of white space we left, everything was meant to be like bookmarked and dog-eared and drawn in. Like, we really want it to be used. That was the whole goal.
I like it. All right. So the one-page financial plan. Tell us about that book. Is it's still relevant today?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that book continues to draw lots of questions. I mean, that was you know this as well as anybody that often when somebody asks you for, like they find out you're a financial planner and then they'll say something like, "Oh man, how do I invest my 401k?" Or how much should I say? How should I save for education? And the unfortunate answer always was, it depends. Like, I need a bunch more information to help you. And I was like, what if I set out to write a book that was like, just here's a good enough answer. Yes, are there better answers? 100% for sure. But let's at least get a good enough answer. And that was what the one-page plan was. Just like, can we get a good enough answer to some of the major decisions? And then one of the very specific things that people ask about all the time with that book was around the idea of starting, using some of Simon Sinek's work, starting with why, like getting clear about purpose, which typically, especially 11, 12 years ago, wasn't part of the conversation in financial planning. It was, like, we were always endlessly debating whether to take a plane, a train, or an automobile on a trip, but nobody had stopped to say, where are we going? And so that's a big part of the book, is like, let's start with figuring out where we're going. Then we can go have the conversation about whether to take a plane, a train, or an automobile, on a car, on a trip.
Yeah. So I always tell my clients, like, first we need to figure out where you are, and then we need to figure out where you want to go, and then we figure out how you get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think probably embedded in your process is a little bit about, like, and why do you want to even go there?
Yeah,
Right? What is it that's important about where you want to go? Which I love.
absolutely. Okay. And then the behavior gap. That was your first book?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And that
Tell us
was
a little
that.
bit about that one.
Yeah. That was probably a little more investment focused, a little more sort of behavioral finance. It was early on in and again, to be honest about careers, like, I just was writing this column once a week, woke up one day and had a pile of them. And I had never considered the idea that, like, I wouldn't have dared. I'm a kid from the hills in Utah. I wouldn't have dared had a goal to write a book with Portfolio Penguin. But one of the editors called me one day, like out of the blue, and said, "Hey, I've printed out." Her name was Courtney. She's like, "I've printed out your columns for the last year and a half. I've organized them or a year or so, something like that. I've organized them in chapters and just seeing if you'd write a book for us." And 3 days later, we had an agreement, and we picked. I remember it was in this exact room, actually. We back then we printed them all out and we taped them to the wall, and then we moved them around until we were like, okay, that looks like the right order, and then gathered them up and then went back through them and wrote them. So we took the columns and added to them and put them in good organizationally. But it's largely about behavioral finance as it applies to investing.
Okay. So if someone wanted to take, a step forward today to start aligning their money with their life, what would you suggest they do?
Linda, the easiest place to start is with spending. Your spending. And I want to be really clear about this. This is not about shame or blame or feeling bad. I mean, imagine if you had, so I think the easiest place to start is spending, because we can change our relationship with spending. And imagine if you had a friend and it was the first friend you ever met. So preschool. And it was still the friend that you see the most often. In fact, you see him 3 to 5 times a day. But every time you see them, you feel bad about yourself. Right? Like, that's not a very good friendship. And that's really our relationship with money as it relates to spending. Like, probably our first use of money was spending it. And we do it probably 3 to 5 times a day. And we're either indifferent about it, like we've gotten to the point where we're like, I don't really care if I'd spent $3 at the coffee shop or whatever, or we feel bad about it. Like, blew the budget again. Spendthrift. Like, we have all this language around it. And that's why budgeting is so hard for people. It feels like punishment. So I think the easiest way to make progress with our relationship with money is through spending, because you get 3 to 5 reps a day. And all I want you to do, this is called the spending practice. All I want you to do is just notice. That's it. And you've got to really hold this true. I mean it. It's not about noticing so you can change it. Just leave all change, all improvement, just set it all aside for a little while. Just do this for 30 days. Just notice. And you might want to just write it down, or another way you do it is, like, I like to now, when people say, do you want the receipt? Sometimes I'll go like a week where I'm doing the spending practice. I'll just say, yeah. And as I'm walking out of the store, I'll just look at the receipt. And here's the magic words. The magic word is interesting. You're just curious. So, interesting. I just spent $9.72 at Jimmy John's. Interesting. Crumple up the receipt, throw it away. Or do whatever you do with your budgeting app. Like, it's fine. But all I'm saying is, just if you do a week of that, and you're going to notice immediately, and I want you to pay attention to this, you're going to notice immediately, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And you need to say, and what I prefer to say is like, hey, thanks for the feeling. Don't get mad at it. Don't try to resist it. You just say, you turn to the feeling, say, hey, thanks, but it's okay now. I'm just curious about it right now. So you're trying to rewire all that. And what will happen, that curiosity, and it's really the awareness, if you start paying attention to your spending, especially if you don't have a goal of changing it, your behavior will start to change. I think you can get 80% of the benefits of budgeting by just simple awareness. But even if you do decide to do traditional budgeting, which is awesome, but no one does it. Like, and I mean, maybe your audience, maybe you've been one person who's been able to get people to do it, but almost none of us want to do it. So that's how I would start with making a difference with money. Just start paying attention to it like you would a friend. Just curious. Don't talk to yourself back. And notice those feelings. It's so interesting. The moment you do this, you're going to notice, like, oh my gosh, I can feel tightness in my chest, and all I did was open the American Express bill. And just ask a question, not like, how do I fix it, but just like, what's that about? Oh, that's interesting. And just as you start to notice it, you're going to like, oh my gosh, that's right. My dad used to say to me all the time, don't be so spoiled. Oh, that, like, stuff will start to surface, and you can start unwinding some of those stories through spending.
Yeah. I often say money is emotion first. Pay attention to your emotions, what you're feeling when you're spending money, when you're saving money, anything that has to do with money, uh, to get in touch with how you're feeling about it. And I don't tell my listeners to budget. I have a me money method, which is just setting aside money just for you that you can spend without answering to anyone, not even yourself, without the guilt or shame. So just
Hey,
starts there, and it just puts intention around that money that you're spending on yourself, and it's a mindset shift.
yeah, for sure. I think that's the most important thing that people forget is it's a difference in mindset is the most important thing we can do with money.
Yeah. All right, Carl, tell us who needs to find you and how they can find you.
Mm, it's really interesting. I don't know. I don't know if anybody needs, um, but if I think of my work much more as an adventure journal than it is like prescriptive self-help. If you're on a similar journey, trying to understand this thing and that we call money and kind of make meaning out of it all, um, then I'm noticing things as I'm on the journey with you, and I share them. And so the easiest way is to just go to behaviorgap.com. And I've been sending out a weekly email for, I don't know how long now, definitely over a decade. It's a sketch and as few words as possible. We want it to take you less than 3 minutes to read and leave you thinking all day. And so that's probably the easiest way. Just go to behaviourup.com and just sign up for it. It's creatively called the weekly letter.
I love it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being my guest today, Carl. I really appreciate you taking this time for us and sharing your knowledge.
Thanks, Linda. That was really fun. Thank you.
Yeah. And everyone, thank you for listening. If you're still here, you're one of the real ones. And my closing nugget for you is money works best when it's clear and you know what job you've given it and whether that job belongs to money at all. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to Real Money, Real Life. Want to see what's blocking you from financial confidence or discover your money personality? Head to the resources page at lindagriz.com for our free quizzes. That's LINDAGRIZ.com/resources. If you're loving what you're learning, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. I'm your Me Money Guide to Financial Clarity, Linda Grizely, and I'll catch you next time as we talk more real money, real life, because you deserve to feel confident with your money and good about how you spend it. The content shared here is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It is not financial, tax, legal, or planning advice and does not constitute therapy or mental health counseling. Please consult an actively licensed and qualified professional for advice or help specific to your situation.